This is a big one that people miss. And they think because there's an existing building or maybe it's raw land and it's built on both sides, it does not mean that there is actually water, sewer, power, gas, and telecom to the property. And it doesn't also mean, even if it's somewhere there in the street, that they have capacity. So just a simple phone call to each of the utility providers to go, hey, I'm coming in and proposing this. Any red flags or things that you have.
Welcome, my fellow Flowmasters, to another episode of the Cash Flow Authority podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jansen, the founder of the Flow Authority, and this show is for high-performing professionals. You did everything right. You've got the degree, your career, your income, but there just feels like there's another level waiting. And so here we explore how real estate can become that next challenge worth building so you can take ownership of your future, create a life by design. Now today we're joined by a very special guest, Miss Kristi Kandel. Really excited to have Kristy on today. She's a real estate developer, so first full-fledged developer on the show, the honoree of the day, and founder of I&D Consulting with experience leading projects across industrial, mixed-use, housing, clean energy sectors. She's a creator of DevOS and founder of Local Real Estate Developers, and is focusing on streamlining development and enabling new projects to move from concept to execution. So welcome, Kristy. Happy to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So I always like to start with kind of the journey question. How did your transition, how did you get to this point of where you're at today?
Well, I grew up in a small farming town in Ohio, and I decided after college I wanted to pick where I lived over trying to get a job somewhere and doing that in reverse. So I decided I wanted to live in Florida. So I ended up getting a job right before moving with a exterior sign company. So that company would put up the building signs or the road signs along the street. And I realized through that one of our programs was CVS Pharmacy. And I'm like, wait, there's these people called developers, and they're not only building the pharmacies, but they're building the communities around them. I'm like, what? I want to get into that. So we had worked together for about a year, and I asked one of the leading developers, and I said, hey, what's it take to be a developer? And I thought they'd tell me to go back to school or do something. And they're like, we're a smaller company in the Tampa Bay area, and they had 20 to 30 people at the time. And they said, if you're the right person, we'll teach you the business. And I was like, great, when are you hiring me? So 3 weeks later, I joined their team. And then 2 weeks after that, we actually got the opportunity. So right around 08, 09, so Family Dollar didn't have any locations in California. And they said, would you guys be willing to be our West Coast developer? And some of the guys on our team had done California work in the past. And they said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And I was like, hey guys, I'm the only one without a spouse and multiple kids. I'm the lowest risk. I should go. So that worked. And I ended up opening our office in Orange County, California for about 4 years. For about 4 years, I was developing 30 Family Dollars a year. So our real estate guys would get the dirt under contract, and I'd come in and do the due diligence, find the architects and engineers, entitlements, permitting, and construction management. It was insanity. 60 to 80-hour weeks, a crash course in development in one of the toughest states. And I, through that, got to work with hundreds of municipalities, utility providers, DOT, and really started to see the commonalities that even though development is different by each city, each zoning designation, there are certain questions that you can ask to go, oh, okay, if we ask these questions, we'll define the process and then we'll know what to do. And then I worked with a developer in Newport Beach for a while, and we did larger. I said, well, let me see what larger shopping centers are like and what doing mixed use or multifamily or industrial. And again, that was the same thing to go. It doesn't matter the type of project or where it's at. If you know the right questions to ask, you're good. So 2015, I started my own company, ended up getting into clean energy, doing a lot of hydrogen work. And now I'm working on community destinations to bring sports and wellness destinations to our communities to kind of fill in that missing third space of where do we go to have fun and connect with our friends and neighbors and to even build local friendships, because it's hard to make friends as an adult.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, that's interesting because I was telling Kristy before the show, I just moved to Dallas literally last week from Orange County. So a little bit of overlap there, but yeah, it's a great place. I'm going to miss it for sure, but now into other opportunities. But that's really cool. I love the story, the background. When did you start, when did you get that first job with that smaller development company that was doing CVS and Family Dollar?
Would have been 08, I think.
Oh,
So
okay.
literally
Okay.
right when the crash was happening. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice. Okay. Now, I mean, a
I'm
lot
very
of,
glad I didn't see the days of development, though. I hear the stories where
mm,
people were betting vacations to Hawaii, 10 and 20 and $30,000 bets because they were making so much money. So I'm
wow.
very glad I came in when everyone stopped making money. So I learned to grind, and that money doesn't always come easy. And there's
Yeah.
times in development where it just seems like it's flowing in, and there's other times where it's like,
Yeah.
is anything coming?
How is it right now on that spectrum in your
It's
experience?
been tough for the last probably 4 years to get something to underwrite and actually work. There's so much fluctuation that's out there. That's where it's, if you are hyper local and truly understand your market and understand where
Mm,
something is needed, then you're good. But if you're trying to look at it at a bigger picture scale, it's tough and you're coming into a market to go, I want to do this.
mm.
It's very tough to get something to work right now.
Okay. All right. Shooting it straight.
Deals can be had. You make your own deals in development, but you've got to
Yeah.
truly, that I'm just a big proponent of locals doing it in their market, because you know what's missing, you know what's needed, you know the local players, you can work with the cities to get extra grants and incentives. So you need to
Hmm.
do some work to put a deal together that makes sense, and they can be there. It's just work.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So a lot of listeners, are more passive investors. They want to get into investing. Maybe they're new, haven't done it before, but the big, lure is, oh, passive. It's passive investment. So development's more of an active side. So can you kind of go over maybe the pros and cons and why, you might consider
Mhm.
developing more of a cheat code for building long-term wealth?
Even with development, we still need our limited partner investors. Like, we're right now looking at taking down a boutique hotel in Lake Tahoe. So we will have an opportunity where we're going to have limited partners come in, and that again is passive. But what I like about development, and it's the same way, I'm a serial business owner, starter. I can't help myself but start the next company. I like to control the performance of what's happening. So whether it's the performance of the company or the asset, I like to be able to leverage, and I've got 20 years of development experience. So I can help drive this ship to make sure that it's a positive outcome. Because one of the things with development is that it is inherently risky, and your deal will probably blow up 3 times along the way, and it's up to you, the problem solver, to then put it back together. And it's just the nature of it, because there's so many stakeholders involved. You've got property owners, cities, it spans 18 to 36 months, you've got contractors, there's just so many variables that can go in. But to me, that's also the fun part, because then afterwards, when you do have it built, you can drive by and go, hey, I did that. And oh,
Yeah.
it's a mixed use building. You now have 4 different businesses that have companies they're running out of there, and they have employees who are out of that. And then the community is coming in. And so you're like,
Hmm.
wow, me being willing to put in the work just created how much opportunity for our
Yeah.
community members and revenue for the city.
Yeah. I mean, you created that whole ecosystem, which is
Yeah.
real. That's really cool. That's really cool. And even I mean, I'm an engineer, so even just engineering things, like now my career has been water resources.
Mhm.
99% of what I've designed is underground, buried somewhere, and nobody even
Right.
knows it
And
exists.
guys, there's these water lines I didn't exist that I designed, but yeah.
Right. So that's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of pride you can have out of that. I'm sure you do. And so for the limited partners, I mean, and you don't need. I'm just trying to get some rough idea. I mean, with existing buildings, people are advertising, double your money basically in 5 years is kind of what they're advertising. Which, do they actually hit that? I don't know, but that's what they're projecting with rate. But the levers you have to pull on existing assets are pretty minimal, I feel, unless it's a big value add project. It's like, yeah, you can increase rents, you can add some amenities maybe and attack on some other fees.
Mhm.
When you're developing, I mean, free reign, you can kind of build what you
It's
want. So,
Right. And it's kind of, I'm also a big fan of adapted reuse. So, like, taking that building downtown and bringing it back to life and repurposing it into today's
mm,
stuff. And I like that because you're doing less horizontal, so less of the underground earthwork,
yeah,
and you're doing more of taking an existing building. But it's just like flipping a house. You don't know what's in
yeah,
the walls, you don't know what the bones are, the structure, the MEP, so the roof, you've got those going. But I also appreciate the fact that why build new and take up more raw land if there's existing assets that are underutilized in your town? So I'm a huge fan of that. You can get all sorts of grants and incentives for like historic tax credits or brownfields, or there's different grants, storefront facades. So that can allow you to do it. And if you get an existing, you already have an asset that's there. So the bank understands that more than a 3-year development cycle. And there's other opportunities within the community, and it goes faster to get it open. And you can even do it in phases. My co-host on the local developer pod, he ended up buying a mixed use building. And so he's got 2 tenants that are currently doing their TI improvements, their tenant improvements on the bottom, while they're planning, hey, in the future, we could add about 7 or 8 residential units for long-term, or maybe their Airbnb because it's close to downtown. But you don't have to do it all at once either, which is cool to be like, hey, get some tenants in, get some cash flow going, and maybe you get that money and then use that to remodel the upstairs. Where now, if you do raw land, I'm a big fan. The only thing you don't know is what's in the ground. And you can do certain stuff to see, but you're at least building clean from the start. So there's pros and cons to both. I like both, and it just depends on the type of projects you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never been a flipper. I've been like, keep it simple, just buy the building, do a little work here and there, and then rent the thing out. Like BRRRR method is cool. I like the BRRRR method, but it's for me, I'm like, it's got to be kind of pretty self-explanatory, rehab and stuff. And so I don't know, with this transition I'm doing, I'll call it a transition. I'm going to still be buying existing buildings, but I'll be doing the development too. Right now we're looking at raw land, but we're open to those other ideas. We're kind of trying to figure out like the whole mission statement, what exactly it is that we're doing.
And even where you're at, you could even do something where you don't even go vertical, but maybe you find larger tracts of land and you end up subdividing them, and maybe even rezoning it from agricultural to commercial, depending on what the city or county's master plan is. And then now you're just more so, and you being a civil engineer, you can be drafting the plans and doing it and working with the surveyor, and you have less cost out of pocket, but now you've created a value add for the community, because now that builder can come in and say, great, you've got it rezoned to commercial or multifamily, I'm going to come in and do the builds now and be more of that. So it's just, there's so much opportunity when we're thinking about what we want to do in our communities, that I'm also a big fan of just going into the communities you want to work in and looking at their 30-year master plans and to see what's the current zoning, what's the proposed zoning, where, and even talking with city staff to go, where do you guys want more of this? Like, where can I add value? And then they'll tell you, because they know what they want in their community. And it's like, hey, if they have the blueprint, they want this to happen. So it kind of mitigates risk and sets you up for success to go, okay, let's give it a shot.
For sure. Now, when you're doing raw land, you're going through the entitlement process, what are some red flags to look out for that could really wipe out any cash flow before you even start doing the project?
There's a handful of, like, I would call it desktop due diligence I would do first, to just, before you ever spend a dime, is to figure out what is the current property zoning. And if you need to rezone it, does the city even approve that in the first place? Because I was on the planning commission up in Lake Tahoe, and we would not approve a rezone. It didn't matter what it was no growth, no development. You weren't getting approved for it, even if we needed it. That was just, the board vote was just tilted that way. Whereas it could also be that, hey, no, the only way to go through this, like in Tampa, Florida, you basically have to rezone every single property, but it's a very slam dunk process to where it's like, oh, you just have to go through these steps. So I would outline and figure out from the local municipality, what can I build here? What's the zoning? What can we build? What's reasonable? At the same time, talk to utility providers. This is a big one that people miss. And they think because there's an existing building, or maybe it's raw land and it's built on both sides, it does not mean that there is actually water, sewer, power, gas, and telecom to the property. And it doesn't also mean, even if it's somewhere there in the street, that they have capacity. So just a simple phone call to each of the utility providers to go, hey, I'm coming in and proposing this. Any red flags or things that you have. So like zoning and utilities are very key. I will also, when I walk a property, just kind of looking at it to see, and even at Google Earth, but have there been road widenings? Does it look like there's a ditch in the middle? Does it look like power lines are running straight through the middle? And just kind of doing a visual, like, what do I think could get in the way of me doing what I want to do? So just kind of doing those initial things to go, okay, this could be a deal. Let's take it one step further. And
Yeah.
I like to use the analogy that development is a lot like unpeeling an onion. You're just one layer at a time, and it's knowing the right layer to do at the right time. So you're not spending money until you have to, and just kind of going, okay, cool. We're being a detective. We're figuring this out. All right.
Nice, nice. And, in my engineering career, now this is different, right? Our clients were always municipalities.
Yeah.
But I swear, I don't think I've ever, okay, if you're from any company I've worked for, or close your ears, but I don't think I've ever like seen a project go under budget. Like everything's always over budget. Is that the world that you
Well,
see in the land developments as well?
I think the reason it's that way is people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah,
So line items that should have been in a budget just weren't there. And
yeah,
it's because it's not, hey, the contractor's price just blew up 50% more than what it was. Yes, their pricing is going to fluctuate, but normally it's people didn't know what they didn't know. Like there was one property that I came in way late on to help consult with someone in Southern California, and they were under construction. They did not have water rights. There was no water. We had to literally hunt down the Nichols family and then figure out the group that they had leased water to for 99 years and then go, cool, we're going to pay close to $1 million of fees just to get the right to have water while it was already under construction. I was like, oh dear,
wow,
like that is why I say, no, please talk to utility providers early, because even if you're in a city or town, it does not mean you get that. So I think it's more so just not knowing what you don't know. And I mean, we have due diligence reports that we'll do for projects. And it's funny, the longer someone has been around, their due diligence report grows and grows, because there's always that one-off scenario that something happens. So you'll never fully define every single one, but you can, with the right team and consultants and experience, go, okay, I've got all the big ones, and yeah, we might get hit 5,000 there, or there might be a little plot twist there, but that's why you have contingency. And so that's more
yeah,
so why I see the numbers fluctuate, or not knowing that, hey, there's a transportation impact fee in California that is $85,000 for your little 8,000 square foot building. Oh crap. Because on the East Coast, our transportation fee might be $5,000. So
yeah,
it's also figuring out each market and understanding that, it's like, for example, back in the day, the family dollars that we would build on the East Coast would be land, vertical permit fees, impact fees, everything. Maybe you could build a family dollar for 750 to 1.1 million. In California, it was 2.2 minimum. And it was 2.2 to 2.6. And the
yeah.
number of calls and conversations we had to say to go, here is why it's so different. But I mean, you also went from permit and impact fees at like 10 to 40 grand being up close to 350,000.
That's insane.
So,
Yeah,
and that's just the fees, let alone land prices fluctuating and all of that.
and you wonder why there's a housing problem, right, in California, and they want to blame all the landlords. It's like, yeah, we're the problem, right?
Well, and you asked earlier, you're like, well, what deals are penciling? I mean, there are some projects where the municipalities are giving away the dirt and we cannot build and make it make sense.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
But that's where I think the opportunity of technology and AI, and I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about being able to 3D print, and that I don't know, I think it was a 1,500 square foot or a 2,000 square foot house, they were being able to get done for around 110,000. I'm like, okay, now we're talking. Now we're talking things that can make sense, and we just need to get innovative in what we're using and switching up materials. That it'll take time, but there's a lot of smart minds who are trying to figure this out and make it work.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, I'm hoping well, from what my partners tell me who are from this area, the red tape, which you can imagine, is much, much less
Yes.
in Dallas than it is in anywhere probably in California. But so that's good news. But okay, so say you get this property, you get some land, you entitle it, and now you want to go build. How are you funding these deals? Are you self-funding them? I know you mentioned having LPs and raising capital. What is kind of your typical deal capital structure look like?
Typically, I have not done a syndication because I really don't want to do those now on our large sports and wellness facilities. I mean, those are 140 million plus. That's a 5 to 6 year redevelopment. That's a public-private partnership. So that's going to be very complex. Traditionally, though, on the smaller, more standard deals that we're doing, I will have a close group of people that are my money people. And that's honestly, at some point everyone runs out of money, and so you have that network of high net worth people who go, I am so busy with my jobs, my businesses, maybe I'm a high W-2. I know that you're going to go execute, so I'm going to be your money person, but I have no time to put into this. Great.
Yeah.
And that's typically how most development deals are done. So we'll have a handful of LPs that can come into a deal, or so from that standpoint, we're typically not raising capital and going out. It's more joint venture type deals. And then you're working with the local regional banks. So the regional banks are the ones who understand their market the best. They understand the products that are needed, and they're willing to take a risk on that market. And it's not just the project, but you're selling you and your capability of executing. So you and your partners together then tell that story, so they can go into their bank committee meetings and they can go, oh, like, I know that they're new to the market or it's their first time doing this, but here's their track record.
Yeah.
And the fact that one's a civil engineer, one's a broker, one's a this, one's a that. Great. And they're all bringing this to the table. Their plan makes sense. We understand how this is going to happen. They're building contingency for stuff to go wrong. They're using this local contractor who's really good at this mixed use type development. And that's what this is. So that they're looking at your whole team and you're telling that story to go, okay, let's make a deal. And then getting that construction loan that turns into the permanent loan.
Nice. Okay. So you usually will do kind of a hybrid. You'll have the construction loan, but then you also bring in some LPs.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, on some of the smaller ones, you might only need like $100,000 to $300,000. So then you're like, great, I will just leverage, for people who are investors, great, get a HELOC on your property or sell one asset and trade up. But you typically, because you can get that construction loan, build it, you've now created all this additional value. Sometimes, depending on what that final value is, can mean that you have very little into the deal at all, cash wise. And you're going to go do a lot of the sweat equity in time. And you probably put soft cost at risk, like your architects, your engineer fees, different things to get through the process. But it's not as much as people would think. You don't need millions of dollars to go make especially smaller deals happen.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good feedback, because we're kind of, again, going back and forth with that idea of, do we need to raise all this money from all these people? And
I'd say less is better at first, just because, and the whole reason I haven't done syndications, I don't want all those bosses. If you take someone else's money, you now you're answering to them, because you are now taking their money and you are responsible for it. So it's like, nope, I want people who understand how I operate, how it gets done, that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to communicate. We're going to keep them in the loop. But I want as few partners and cooks in the kitchen as possible.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, going now more into, like, you kind of mentioned this a little bit, like building out your community and where you currently live. So when we're talking about building your own backyard, how does a community-driven development approach directly translate into lower tenant turnover and more resilient cash flow?
Yeah, so what I have started doing now, last August, we came up with the concept and have now developed it. We'll open phase 1 in Bonita Springs here in June. But basically, we're creating a sports and wellness community-led destination. So it is going to have your indoor-outdoor sports. It has your giant wellness building. So it has the studios, the cryo, the sauna, the athletic trainers, kids daycare, aquatic pool, a dog park, indoor, outdoor, a food park. So basically everything that you want to go to in your community when you're not sleeping and not working. And it's a way to get the community to gather and go, hey, if you're a mom, you're coming at 10 a.m. to do a Pilates class, you've got your kid, you've got the childcare. Great. Afterwards, you can actually grab a coffee and do the walking trails with your friends because it's there. And maybe your husband comes and meets you for lunch. And if you have a volleyball tournament on the weekend, we have the dog care. So it's like, great, bring your dog. They're here at the facility. You can play all day, not have to worry and go. So it's like, what are the things that keep us from spending time together? Let's remove that friction and put it there. So, and then this one, like I said, it's a 5 to 6 year phase development. So phase 1 is getting the leagues going. So we'll run soccer leagues, basketball, volleyball leagues, have nightly sports scrambles in the fields to where it's like, cool, tonight's kickball. Everyone who signs up, once you're here, we're going to assign teams and we're going to play. Winners get drink coupons, stay, hang out, grab food after. But a way to, all of these it's all about the programming to make sure that you build it, but then you give people who feel comfortable, like as a person, you just moved here. Chris, you can show up, you can put your name in, you can play wiffle ball tonight. And now you met people in your community who were doing that too. And it reduces the barriers and gives you more opportunity to build relationships that can turn into friendships, that can turn into lifelong bonds. So And then
Nice.
what that does, and we'll have a combination of our own run stuff, but we'll also have, like in the food park, we'll have local restaurants come in and they'll bring their food trucks. So that way they can have their businesses there and then be like, great, go spend money locally at their actual restaurant,
Yeah.
or do a health fair once a month, or all sorts of different activities that pull the community together. And it's like, great, now go to this and that at their actual location. So we're going to track the economic impact on the community as well as the health and happiness, because if we can track how much we're improving our community, both dollar wise and just happiness, like people are literally saying, hey, we're actually going to move up from Naples to get closer to Bonita Springs because we want to be closer to this. So you start tracking things like that. And now you go to cities and you can do public-private partnerships, and we can say, hey, let's reinvent how we're thinking about our park system. And let's start building these types of locations because this gets our community together. And so it's thinking about the bigger picture and the blueprint for how do we scale this? Once we prove that this works, how do we scale this and help other communities do the same?
Nice.
Because in the age of AI and tech, and everyone's kind of wondering, okay, well, what businesses are going to be around? What's going to survive? Where's this or that? It's community connection and relationships. That's what we're going to need the most. And so it's creating places like that are missing. And so you don't need to start with something that big, but what if you built a really cool co-working space that also was adjacent to, I don't know, you partner with a brewery or something and a sandwich shop, and like you guys all kind of put that together, and now you're like, great, we're going to work from here, and then we can grab lunch here, and then we can grab a drink after. Like just thinking about things like that in your community that you want, and then working with people to make it happen.
Nice. That's so cool. It's like we went from COVID, isolation, 2020, and now we're talking well, everybody knows. I feel like this is the thing, everybody wants to be together now and be out. It's just had this, COVID just got flipped on its head, and I think we realized with COVID how terrible it is to be isolated and how much we have that inherent need, to be together with the community.
We're humans. We're meant for community and connection. We are not meant to be alone and to be hermits that are just like, no.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, I've talked about this with my other friend, Travis, he's an engineer, but he's not an investor really in real estate, or he did a little bit, but anyways, it's not really his world, but we've shared those topics and talks too about, like, hey, what if we created this cool little micro community where people can live and they've got, whatever they need right there. Like you said, the coffee shop, the restaurants, the bar, the trails, the nature, all the things, the pet care, the daycare, because pet care too. I mean, man, I got to go on a trip for a few days and what do I do with my pet? So I got to trust the people I'm leaving them with. So all these things. So that's awesome. That's really cool. And encouraging to hear that you're doing that. So, okay, last question I got for you before we hop for the day. But there's folks like me, who are getting into this, and then but I've got the engineering, so I have some background. And then there's also people listening who are like, never done anything real estate. And I'm saying this because I know one person in particular who may or may not be listening, but she's never done any real estate, never bought a property in her life, and wants to go straight head on into development, which is cool. And I want to encourage her to do it. But, if we want to do first time developer, shovels in the ground this year, it's almost the end of April. I mean, I guess first question, is that even realistic? And if it is, what's the most critical action that individual should take to make that happen, or at least get the ball rolling?
It is possible. You would really need to be, so development, you're juggling 10,000 balls at one time. So at the same time, like for example, for the past 210 days, we were looking for our site for Elevate in Southwest Florida until we found it. We weren't just looking for a site. At the same time, we were building the business plan. We were working with lenders to build those relationships. We were working with future limited partners to be investors in the deal. We were working with nonprofit partners to understand their parameters, to know when we get a site, how can we plug you in? Because we want a portion of this to be free to the community just because they live here, not because they have to buy a membership. We were talking to sponsors to say, when the sports leagues come, here's what we need to do. So you're doing multiple things that don't cost you any money at the same time. So I would say, one, start by being focused on a specific market. And you could do a couple of markets at once, but I would say don't stretch yourself too thin. Get to know who the city managers are, the planning departments, because it seems like development is big and scary, but we have over 16,000 communities in the United States that have a population of less than 10,000 people. That means if you can flip a house, you can take that downtown building and do something with it. You truly can. And it also means that your city manager is very approachable, that your planning department is approachable, your city council, everyone is there to help you. They legit really just want you to come in and say, hey, I would love to do this with this building. Can I do it? They'll be like, no, the zoning doesn't work, but you could do it with these properties if you can get the property owner on board. So telling the people in your community what's happening. And so we say there's 5 strategic partners. There's many, but you're one of the ones who would be the closest to getting into development. So civil engineers, architects, brokers, lenders, contractors, you're already doing development. You're just being a fee for service. Whereas when you go to the developer, now you're coming up with the idea and you're the one who's managing all the steps. So you already know a heck of a lot of the process. And there's just these little gaps of knowledge that you don't have. So building those relationships with the other strategic partners, with the brokers who do the type of project you want to do, with the contractors who build the type of project, because then as you get a site and you go, okay, well, what's next? Okay, hey, contractor, what's the price per square foot? I want to build an 8,000 square foot, one single story building. Great. Now you have that number to work on underwriting. Hey, lender, I finally found this site. I can build it for about this. What are your current terms today? Great. Awesome. And you're working all of those angles to where you could break ground, put a shovel in the ground if you have an existing building and you can get that under contract and go. So you could, and there is some raw land that you could do the same. Just looking at it going, it's almost the end of April. So you have 8 months left to get to that point. But yeah, it's totally possible to at least get to the point where you could get some contractors hired. But there's also so much more that needs to happen before you do put the shovel in the ground that you can be doing in the meantime that costs you nothing.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for the encouragement and all the great knowledge that you've shared with us today, Kristi. It's been great to have you on. I do want to give you an opportunity, and we'll include this with the show notes and stuff too, links and whatnot, but where's the best place people can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so I do just about everything in development and real estate. So if you go to kristikandel.com, that will kind of show the different. I have consulting that is like a done for you service. I have local real estate developers where there's a mentorship program and a podcast. And I would say the podcast is awesome. We're constantly sharing stories. So just like Bigger Pockets had everything about real estate investing, well, we're sharing all the stories to make you feel more comfortable and make development seem normal. I also have a free blueprint course that people can just take. So I'm trying to give away as much information as possible because I just want more locals in the game doing it. Because if locals are shaping our communities, we're building it right, we're doing it the right way, and it's going to be stuff that lasts and not something that goes out of business in a year. So yeah, and just, again, like I said, very happy to help and just get more people in the game.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And yeah, it's been great having you on, and I look forward to hearing people's feedback from the show because, again, I keep finding people that want to get into development and I can help them to some extent with my experience, but until I actually do my own development, there's only so much. So this is invaluable information. So again, appreciate your time and looking forward to the next conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Cash Flow Authority podcast. We hope the insights shared today help you take the next step toward optimizing your finances and building sustainable wealth. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It helps other entrepreneurs and investors discover the show. And don't forget to catch the next episode for more insights. Until then, keep mastering your cash flow.